Hi lovelies, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Maria and today's video is going to be my July reading wrap up. So just going through all the books I read in July, what I thought about them, if I liked them, if I didn't like them. I'm basically just giving you an overview of all my reading. So I will say that I felt like July got off to a really slow start and it was just a multitude of things. I was feeling a little bit slumpy, but also I just know that I was really busy. I wasn't in my own house as well for the first kind of portion. I was dog sitting for my sister and just had a load of things going on that meant that I didn't have a lot of time to actually sit down and physically read. So any reading I was doing was very much on the go, listening to audiobooks and reading my Kindle and just trying to get as much reading in as possible. But I think within the first 2 weeks of July I read like maybe 2-3 books at most, which for me isn't kind of the norm. I would usually read about 2 to 3 books per week. Usually about 2.5 is on average per week for me. So I had read about half the amount of books that I normally read. So I mean, it's not terrible, it's not about numbers, but it just meant I felt like I got off to a pretty slow start. But even though I ended up reading 8 books in the month, I still think in terms of quality I ended up having a really good time with most of my reads as well. So as I say, it's not about numbers, but I just know for me it was a bit of a slower reading month because I usually average around 10 to 12 books per month. So 8 does feel a little bit low for me, but it is absolutely not about the number of books you read. It's more about the quality and how much you enjoy them and what you get from them. So in the end, it doesn't really matter. But without further ado, let's just get into all the books I read in July. So the first book I picked up in July was actually an arc I had from Scarlett Sinclair and it was Terror at the Gates. And this one, not really sure how to summarise it. There was a lot of different themes in there, but basically the synopsis just says, estranged from her powerful family, Lilith Leviathan finds refuge in Nineveh, a district in the city of Eden devoted to sin. There she uses her magic to steal for a living, attracting the attention of 5 governing families, as well as a church which expects women to remain pious and silent. When Lilith comes in the possession of a beautiful blade, she thinks all her worries are over, until her usual buyer dies while he's inspecting it. Frantic Lilith turns to the only man who can help her, Sahariv, head of the Sarith family and ruler of Nineveh. His currency is information, his power is extortion, though he always had a soft spot for Lilith. But when the dagger appears, he isn't sure he can protect her from what's to come. Together they embark on a mission to discover the true power running their world. As their lives intertwine, Lilith realises Sahariv is more than just a friend, but their devotion to each other is a threat to the truth, to the church, and to those who want to tear it all down. So as you can tell, there's kind of a lot of themes in there around religion and kind of structured religion, and I think some of the themes are kind of how it can have had a negative impact at times. It's not kind of demonizing the church or anything, it just is within the story, the people who are running it use it to their advantage to try and hold other people down. So a lot of themes in there around that. And having read Scarlett Sinclair before, I did expect this to be a bit dark and gritty. I thought there would be a little bit of emotional depth and a bit of fun and a little bit of spice as well. And I think that's exactly what I got with this one. I will say there was probably less spice in this one than I was expecting, just from what I've read from this author before. But that was actually quite welcome for me because I don't think it was needed for this story. There was a lot of sexual tension between the two characters. I really liked the way their relationship built, but it definitely wasn't as spicy on the spice level as some of her other books have been, so I really appreciated that. I always say I'm not against spice, but only when it serves the story, and for this I think there was the perfect amount in there. I don't actually know kind of the source material on the story of Lilith or where this retelling is coming from, but that is what it's a retelling of. So I was really intrigued to see what Scarlett Sinclair would do with it, and I just really loved how she characterised Lilith. I thought she was a really strong female protagonist. I was rooting for her very quickly. I really wanted her to succeed. I loved her tenacity, her refusal to back down, especially in this patriarchal society that's kind of continually pushing for her to fit in this box that they've made for her, and I just really loved the way she was characterised, and especially how her dynamic was with the male main character, so Sahariv. I thought their chemistry was immediate on the page. I could really feel their connection. Scarlett Sinclair done a really good job of kind of making me believe that they'd had this connection because they're supposed to have known each other kind of all of their lives, and I really felt that very early on. So not sure how she done it, but I really felt their connection, so it really made the chemistry for them really electric. And as I say, with this one there was less spice in it, there was a lot of tension, and it was definitely a slow burn, kind of a will they, won't they. There's reasons they shouldn't really be together, and I think that really helped with building that tension for the two of them, so really loved that as well. But the thing that kind of kept me most engaged was the mystery that was surrounding this blade that she had found and why it's killing people, how people are dying after it, and I just loved the way it ended. It definitely ended on a cliffhanger, and it's made me want book 2 straight away. Even though this one's only out, it's going to be a painful wait for that book 2, but this one is out now, so you can get this. So if you're interested in kind of a dark, maybe mafia style romance type of story with a tiny bit of fantasy mixed in there, it was kind kind of a fantasy in the sense that it's a made up world and there is a little bit of magic in there, but it is an urban fantasy and it probably felt more like a mafia romance than anything. So if you're into that type of thing, definitely check this one out because I thought it was really good. It is pretty dark at times, so maybe check out some trigger warnings because there are some pretty heavy topics discussed in here, but I think overall I just really loved my time with this one and ended up rating a 4.5, so all in all it was a pretty good start to the month. Next up, I'm going to talk about two of the books that I read at the same time. So basically this month I finished up my buddy read for the Percy Jackson series. If you've been here before you may know, but if not, I am doing a buddy read with some of my friends from Bookstagram for the Percy Jackson series. We never read it when we were young, so we wanted to take the opportunity to read it together because we feel like we missed out. We don't really have those memories of reading this series, so decided to pick it up together just because we thought it would be fun to buddy read it. And this month we read the final two books, so Battle of the Labyrinth and The Last Olympian, and I have to say overall I've really enjoyed this series. I do think it reads very young. Obviously it is aimed at, I think, middle grade, so probably like 12 to 15 year olds, or at least the younger side of YA. I'm not exactly sure on the age range that it's pointed at, but it does feel very much younger, and that's not a criticism, it's just for your information. It is for a much younger audience, so just in case you're thinking of diving into it yourself, it's just something to take note of. But I think I still really enjoyed it anyway, you know, despite that target age range. I still managed to really enjoy it. I do think if I'd read this when I was about maybe 12 to 13, I would have been obsessed. I would have been absolutely obsessed just with all of the integrations of the Greek mythology and things like that. I know I had an era where I was really obsessed with that, so this would have been perfect to read at that time. But if you don't know what this series is about, basically we're following Percy Jackson, who is a young boy who I think on his 15th birthday or 14th birthday basically finds out that he is the son of a Greek god. I won't say who because I don't know if it's a bit of a spoiler, but if you don't know, I'll leave it for you to find out. And essentially within this story, he's sent to a camp on his, actually I think it's his 12th birthday, whatever age he is, he's sent off to this camp to kind of train with the rest of the god's children. And there's also this prophecy that kind of says one of the god's children, when they turn 16, are going to mean the end of the world as we know it. And essentially we're just following him and some of his ragtag group of friends along on all these different missions and journeys. Each book, it is quite episodic. It follows an overall storyline, but it does feel very much like Monster of the Minute. You know, each book is kind of a certain scenario they have to solve before the end of it. So it just made it feel really fast paced. Obviously they're quite short because they are targeted at a younger audience as well. And yeah, I think overall I'd probably rate this series like a 3.5 to a 4 star for me personally, but as I say, because it is targeted at a much younger audience, take that with a pinch of salt. I think if I'd read this when I was 12 or 13, it probably would have been like god tier for me. I would have absolutely loved it. But I do think as an adult, even reading it now, I did still really enjoy it, and I'd probably still really recommend it if you like Greek mythology, fast-paced reads, short reads, anything kind of within that realm. I would still highly recommend picking this one up because we had a lot of fun buddy reading it, and we're actually intrigued to move on to some of the rest of the books. We kind of read the first, I think it was the first 5 books, which are kind of like one set of the series, and I know there are some more books kind of ongoing as Percy gets older as well, so we may pick those up at some time. We're not doing it just yet, but I would be interested in reading those just to see where the story goes from there. But yeah, overall really enjoyed both of those, and yeah, would highly recommend. So next up I read Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher, and this was my book club pick for my Tulips and Tales Fable book club. If you haven't seen that before, I do have it linked in the description of pretty much all of my videos as well, but it's a completely free book club. We basically pick a book each month to read together and buddy read it through the Fable app, so if you're interested, definitely check out that link below. Before July we picked Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher, and I really did enjoy this one. I've been really enjoying kind of most of the books that are set within this same world. So if you haven't heard of this series before, there are kind of interconnected stories with the Saints of Steel series that T. Kingfisher wrote, so the stories aren't technically connected, but they're set in the same world. So you can kind of read these in any order. It doesn't really matter which one you pick up first, but this is technically at the moment a standalone, but I think there is another book coming out that's more connected to this one. But yeah, essentially these are kind of cozy romantasy stories with a dark kind of undercurrent in there and a mystery in the background as well. This one didn't have so much of the mystery aspect in there, but it did have that dark undercurrent that you probably would be more used to if you've read some of T. Kingfisher's other books, as a lot of her books tend to lean more towards the horror genre. But this one we're following Hala, who is an older FMC than you would be used to seeing. She's around 36. She's just lost her husband, and essentially her husband's family are really awful people and trying to manipulate her to ensure that they keep the money her husband left her within their family. And what has made this worse is her husband's uncle, who kind of took a shine to Hala as well, also died recently and left his estate to her too. So the family are hell-bent in making her marry her late husband's cousin to ensure she doesn't get her hands on the money that has been left to her. So at the start of this story, she's in a bit of a perilous situation. She's locked up in a room basically until she will agree to marry her late husband's cousin, and she decides that rather than face that fate, she would rather unalive herself. And in order to do that, what she does is lifts a sword off the wall that has been kind of lying there gathering dust for quite some time. But when she unsheathes the sword, she actually ends up with a warrior in the room who has been trapped within the sword for however many years. And because she unsheathed the sword, he is now sworn to protect her. And the story goes from there. We're kind of following getting Hala out of this situation. We're following the warrior that comes out of the sword, how he got in there, how he can be untethered from the sword. And as I say, it was just a bit of a cozy romantasy story. I did really enjoy it. I ended up on a 4-star for this one because I do think that it was a little slow paced at times. There wasn't really a true direction in this one. It was much more character driven and vibes over plot. But I did really enjoy the vibes of this one because it is really cute. It was quite kind of adorably awkward in terms of the FMC and the MMC, just in their interactions together. I thought our FMC was really quirky and sarcastic as well, and I just really loved her inner monologue. It was just really hilarious listening to her. And if you're like me and recently you've been a little bit bored with the romantasy genre, because I think there's only so many tropes, only so many storylines that, you know, authors can write. So nothing against romantasy at all. It is definitely my bread and butter when it comes to genres, but it does get a little bit samey at times. So if you're looking for something a little bit different but still is within that romantasy realm, I would definitely check out these series. Whether it's Sword Heart, as I say, it's a bit more of a standalone, or the Saints of Steel series, definitely check them out because they still have that romantasy fee and they're very much focused on the romance with the subplot in the background, whether it be the mystery subplot or whatever. But we're following slightly older FMCs. They're slightly a bit more quirky. They're not your kind of usual main characters that we're used to seeing within these romantasy stories, so you may end up really enjoying it. And if you're a bit like me and you're a little bit older and you're looking for a protagonist that's above 21, these would be really good books to read. But yeah, overall I ended up giving this one 4-star. And then since we're talking about that series, I also read Paladin Strength, which is the second book in the Saints of Steel series, which is loosely connected to the Sword Heart series. Basically they're set in the same world, and I can't really tell you too much about the specific synopsis of this one, but within this series we're following paladins who have basically been faithful to a god their entire lives until their god ends up dying and they're left at a loss of what to do. Within the first book we're following the story about one of the paladins who helps a perfumer solve a bit of a murder mystery throughout the story, and we're basically just following on in this book but following one of the other paladins, and we're seeing his love story unfold within this one as well. Now this one I ended up rating 3.5, and the main reason I did is because it was just very slow. You know, these are very character driven, they are about the romance, but this one for the first 50% it was a bit of a slog to get through. I didn't really feel hooked with it. I didn't feel connected to our characters as much until the second half of this book. And yeah, even though I do enjoy a very cozy vibes type of story, I needed more vibes. There wasn't as many vibes in this one up until that 60% mark, and I think all of the books within these series have been a little bit lust forward in that most of the romance is built on attraction. You do kind of see a connection in the end, but a lot of the initial interactions are very much in their heads about their attraction to the other person. In the other books I haven't really noticed it so much, but in this one it felt a little bit OTT, and it's probably that I noticed it more because there wasn't so much going on within the first half of this one. But overall still really enjoyed it, still really enjoyed the writing style, really enjoyed being within this world again and kind of the progression we got in the overall storyline. The second half definitely picked up in this one, and I did really enjoy our FMC and our MMC kind of separately as characterizations. Them being together, there wasn't really too much reason for it, but I kind of let it go just because I was enjoying the story overall. So not my favourite in the series so far, but still not a bad book at all. You know, 3.5 is still a really good rating, and I'm still really interested to continue the series on this one. So yeah, not the highest rating in the series, but still a book I would highly recommend. Changing gears a little bit, the next book I read was by Coco Malort, and this is Blue Sisters, and I believe this is her most recent release. And in this one we're following 3 sisters who have recently lost their other sisters. So initially there was 4 of them, but it's coming up to the year anniversary of their sister's death, and we're kind of following them in the aftermath of that, kind of how it's affected their lives, how they've been broken a little bit in terms of their relationship, and basically watching them as they try to repair that and come back together again and build that sisterhood that they had for the rest of their lives. And overall I really enjoyed this. I did think that the dynamics between the sisters was kind of depicted perfectly. I am one of 3 sisters myself and definitely see where kind of similarities lie between myself and my sisters and these sisters as well, just in terms of especially the oldest sister and some of the things that she went through. Obviously as an oldest sister myself, I could relate to her the most, but I could also see some of the personality traits within my other sisters in the characters in here as well. So probably a bit of a universal thing. If you're one of a couple of sisters or something like that, you probably will see some similarities in here. But overall I just think I really love the exploration in this of personal growth, kind of personal accountability as well for mistakes that have been made, whether it was with grief or whatever it may be. We really did see the characters grow in here, and sometimes they had to kind of hit rock bottom before they could do that. But seeing them kind of overcome some of the issues that they had was just really satisfying, and I would say that this is very, very character driven as well. It's a literary fiction, so you can kind of expect that. There is plot in here, but it is very much about watching these sisters kind of build their relationship again and their own personal growth. So it is very much just about these characters, and you're not going to get much around that. So just a bit of a heads up if you're not really a character driven reader, but if you are, I think you'd really, really love this one just because of how much we get to explore these three characters and kind of their relationship together. And yeah, I just really loved the writing style in this one. I thought it was really beautiful at times. I definitely thought that the characterizations were spot on as well. And yeah, it's definitely made me want to read more from Coco Malors. I do have another book of hers on my Kindle, so Cleopatra and Frankenstein, I believe. And I'd seen kind of mixed reviews on that one, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to pick it up. But after reading this, I think I will give it a go. It probably is quite character driven as well, so it's likely to kind of split those views. And if you're not relating to the characters, you probably won't enjoy it as much. So be interesting to see how I enjoy that one if I do read it. But I think just because of the subject matter of this one, I was able to relate really quickly with it. So yeah, I think if you've got sisters who you've had a pretty close relationship with growing up, you probably will really enjoy this, because I found a lot of the characterizations really spot on with this, so I would highly recommend for that reason. I did end up on a 4-star for this one as well, or I think a 4.25, basically just because it was a little bit slower at times and it was a little bit repetitive at times, which does happen often with literary fiction because it's trying to kind of push a point towards you to convey within that story, and sometimes I love that and sometimes it can feel a little bit repetitive. It's like, okay, you've told me this message before, you know, I know where we're going with this one. But yeah, overall I just thought it was a really good read, and if you love literary fiction or if you're trying to get into literary fiction, I think this was a really approachable one as well. So yeah, another really good read this month, and as I say, rated it around 4.25 stars. Next up is one of my 25 for 2025 and one of my most anticipated reads this year, and that's the Jad Air by Sarah Hashem, and really happy to say that this one didn't disappoint. So in this one we're following the lost Jad Air, Sylvia, who has been in hiding basically for the last 10 years since her kingdom had been overtaken. Essentially in this land, the Jad kingdom had been overtaken as essentially the rest of the kingdoms were quite wary of them because they still had some magic, and this led to a war that ended in the Jad kingdom being crumbled. And while Sylvia was supposed to have been dead at that time, she's actually been in hiding for the last 10 years, living in a neighbouring kingdom. Now in the story at the start we have the Jad Air, who is basically one of Sylvia's biggest enemies, and essentially at the start she runs into the Jad Air and in a fit of anger ends up showing her magic, and because of this she ends up teaming up with the heir to join in on these games or kind of trials in order to earn her freedom, and the story kind of goes from there. But what I will say about this one is that a lot of people have kind of said it's a romantasy, but for me it's definitely much more politically charged and much more on the fantasy side than a romantasy. There is romance in here, but it's definitely the subplot with this one, so just a heads up if you were going to read this one for the romance. While I think it paid off, it's definitely not the main focus of this one. But overall I just think this one was a really compelling debut with some really rich world building in here, elemental fantasy, and as I say, that gripping enemies to lovers subplot really paid off in here as well. I think our FMC Sylvia was really fierce, but she was also quite flawed, and you could kind of see her vulnerabilities coming out throughout the narrative, and even though she wasn't always the most likable person, she was a little bit arrogant at times, I was still really rooting for her because you could kind of see the distress going on in her inner monologue, and when you learn of some of the things that have happened in her past, you can kind of see why she is the way she is, why she has her walls up, why she's quite defensive, and it all kind of makes sense. So even though she's technically an unlikable character at times, I was always rooting for her. The MMC is definitely a little bit of your cookie cutter kind of dark, gloomy, stern MMC, but he didn't feel like a caricature that was just put in there for the trope. He definitely felt like he was well developed and well rounded, and we did get a good bit about his history as well, so I would have liked a bit more from his POV, and I think we will get that in the next book with the way this one ended, but I still felt like we got to really know him throughout this, and the connection between him and our FMC wasn't quite insta-love, but it did kind of happen quite quickly at the end. But if it's after the 60% mark, I can usually let it go, even if it is insta-love, because there has been a bit of build up between them, so it didn't really impact my enjoyment of this one. The pacing did dip slightly in the middle just because of all of that world building we're getting, but I do think that that was a bit of the shining light of this story as well, because there were so many different political kind of machinations that we were going through, learning about this rich world and all these different kingdoms and trying to understand why the kingdoms are the way they are today, why they have certain prejudices, and it did mean the pacing slipped a little, but I do think it was necessary for this story for it to have the full impact. So that was the only really complaint with this one, and it did mean that I brought the rating down to 4.5 stars for this one rather than the 5 stars, but other than that I really had no complaints complaints about this one. I really enjoyed it. I think if you enjoyed An Ember in the Ashes or the Day of a Bad trilogy, I think you'll really enjoy this one as well. It definitely has that same kind of feeling to it in terms of that political structure and the romance subplot as well. And yeah, really glad I picked this one up. Cannot wait to read book 2 in this one as well, because again, ended on a cliffhanger and I really want to see what happens. And I do have actually book 2 coming from Illumicrate, so I'll probably pick that one up really soon. But yeah, as I say, one of my most highly anticipated reads of this year, and it certainly didn't disappoint. And then we definitely ended the month with a bit of a bang, because I read What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez, and again, I think this is on my 25 for 2025. Also one of my most highly anticipated reads, and I ended up absolutely adoring this one. Rated it 5 stars. Spoiler alert, really loved it. And I just can't believe I've waited this long to read it, but I'm kind of glad because I did have book 2 then on tap to read as soon as I finished this one. In this one we follow Inez, who is a young girl living in Argentina. She's around 19 and her parents have basically lived in Cairo for half of her life. They're archaeologists and they currently go on expeditions to try and find artifacts and all those things that you would expect. One day, however, she gets a letter to say that her parents have passed away, and obviously as she's distraught, she ends up travelling to Cairo herself to try and uncover the mystery around her parents' death, try and find out what happened, and to meet her uncle who had been working with them to try and get those answers. When she gets there, however, she is met by her uncle's assistant who is hell-bent on trying to get her back to Argentina. However, our fierce and headstrong FMC doesn't let that happen, and reluctantly her uncle allows her to stay in Egypt with him. And obviously along the way we're following the story between her uncle's assistant, who is the MMC Wit, and Inez as their relationship kind of blooms, all the while they're trying to figure out the mystery behind her parents' death. And it kind of throws Inez into this world of treachery and danger, which may end up costing her life. Now in this one, a lot of people did say that this had the Mummy vibes, and I definitely think it delivered on that. Not only in terms of the setting, obviously this is set in Egypt, but also in terms of the tone, and the sarcastic banter between our FMC and the MMC was just absolutely perfect. And I think up until the 60% mark in this one, I was thinking this was a solid 4-star book. I was loving the exploration of obviously the Egyptian culture, as well as the snippets we were getting of the Argentinian culture, and the exploration of kind of how the British would have excavated for their own personal monetary gain and pleasure. And I found it all really interesting, a really good kind of historical fantasy. But somewhere around the 60% mark, this one really reeled me in even further. There were twists upon twists, reveals upon reveals, and I just could not put this one down. I think I read it within a day, basically because I just needed to know what happened. Was loving the relationship between the couple as well, and if you know with this one, if you've read it, basically the last line in the epilogue, what a great way to end a book, and I'm so glad I had book 2 to move on to basically instantly because I needed to know what happened with this one. So I have now since read book 2, so as I say, that kind of gives you an indication of how much I love this one, because it's been a long time since I've actually been so compelled to read the next book straight away within a series. So as I say, I ended up rating this one 5 stars. I think if you liked the 90s movie The Mummy, you'll probably really like this one as well. Our MMC definitely gives off Rick O'Connell vibes, so absolutely perfect for fans of that movie. And yeah, I just think with the way that it ended and how compulsively readable it was, I couldn't give it anything less than 5 stars, so perfect way to end the month. So that's everything. That's all the books I read in July. Obviously we've got these 5 as well as the 2 Percy Jacksons and the Ark that I read. But other than that, the rest of the reads I had this month were really good standard. I mean, I think my average rating is probably well over a 4 considering the ratings that I give most of these. So even though I felt a bit slumpy, I do think the quality of what I read was really high. So let me know if you've read any of these, what your thoughts and feelings were, if you agree, if you disagree, or if any of these are on your TBR. And let me know what your favourite read was in July as well. And if you don't have anything to comment, just leave me a book emoji to let me know you've got to the end. If you like this video, do remember to give it a like, and if you want to see more from me, remember to subscribe. I post 2 videos per week and it's videos like this, so wrap-ups, TBR jars, book shopping, all good bookish things like that. Other than that, thanks so much for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed it and I'll see you in the next one soon. Bye!